Hello friends, Tal here, and today we're going to be taking a look at my updated impressions for the Brewmaster Monk in the Legion Alpha. So right away, it's very important that I point out two things. First of all, the two-hand animation is still fucking fantastic. Oh my god, it's so good. I love it. I love this new animation that they have. The other one was a little bit retarded, the way everything was upside down. I love this new one. But second thing is, this is an important spec to me. It's an important class. It's important in the sense, specifically to me, that this was the first time I was raid tanking in serious content. The first time I was raiding, I moved up to the ranks. I learned so much about the game was playing a Brewmaster monk. That's when I decided I was going to be serious about raiding in World of Warcraft. Okay, I've done all the content in Mists of Pandaria and all the content in Warlords of Draenor on my Brewmaster monk. I've killed all the things. I've tanked the stuff. I was a Windwalker at some point for some of it. But I've basically since Mists been playing this class. This is my main currently as it stands. I talk a lot about the difference between DPS and defensives and that little dichotomy there, but when I wanted to join a really good top-rated mythic guild, I wanted to make sure I was the best I could possibly be, and that meant going monk because of their toolset, because of their abilities, because of the way that they handle incoming damage. That's what I wanted to be. I wanted to be as strong as I could be by playing amazingly, and that's why I chose my monk. So this is a very important class to me. It is. It's true for the matter. As far as the differences between Warlords of Draenor and Legion, I have to say that Warlords of Draenor started out with monks being in a pretty bad spot. It did. There were a couple of changes that happened that made them so unreliable and so weak that they were basically unplayable. But right before Hymo came out, they were buffed. They were buffed to an extent that people didn't realize how strong they would be, but they buffed them too much. And that's why going into Blackrock Foundry after Highmaul, monks reigned supreme. They owned that entire raid instance. Their stagger could stop literally every single tank mechanic in the entire raid instance, and they were just strong and amazing with guard. Just it was ludicrous. And even in Hellfire Citadel, with some of the nerfs, they're still fantastic. So moving from that high point, that point of not a lot of damage like paladins and DKs, but a ton of survivability, not as great as druids, but able to use their toolset to do amazing, fantastic things, we're moving into Legion. And I honestly cannot say that the change is all good. It's unique, it's different. You will have to sort of relearn how to play your class, but I can't sit here and say that it's positive change all around. I can say that about Druid. I cannot say that about Brewmaster Monk. But that doesn't mean they're bad. It just means I'm not sure that they're quite there yet. There's a couple of reasons for that. So, as far as what the major changes are, you do not have guard anymore. That is no longer a part of your active mitigation toolset. And it's important to mention that first because you had 2 charges of it in Warlords, and that was your short form cooldown that you had that helped you survive through things. And it's something that I'm going to be bringing up multiple times in this video because the truth of the matter is we need something like guard back. Not an absorption shield, but a 30-second or lower 45-second cooldown maybe that helps reduce our damage because the truth of the matter is we have Fortifying Brew. That's it. That's what we have for on-demand, oh shit, heal me, or not heal me, but oh shit, I need to mitigate damage constantly. The reason for that is that your active mitigation is no longer centered around Blackout Kick and Shuffle. That's gone. Blackout Kick, in fact, is now Blackout Strike, and it does not give you Shuffle. You do not maintain Shuffle. You do not maintain Elusive Brew charges. You do not maintain Guard charges. But you still purify and stagger damage. And how do you stagger damage? You're going to be using Iron Skin Brew along with Purifying Brew, and these two share charges, and that's what's going to be your active mitigation. So, I'll go ahead and get more in depth with all that as I'm talking about the spells, but I wanted to first highlight these important changes because they are different. It really is. I think more than the other tank specs, this is a really big change that they're going for. Probably on the level of DK because DKs have one singular rune. Their Bone Shield is generated by Marrow Rend. F strikes on a runic power. This is very similar to that. You don't have Chi anymore. Chi is no longer a factor. And your resources, honestly, charges. But we're going to go ahead and go through all the spells now. I talked a little bit about how they've changed from Warlord, so you don't have access to Chi Explosion anymore, so that's gone as well, which RIP Chi Explosion was one of the best things they ever added. We're going to go ahead and talk about spells now. So, Blackout Strike is a 3-second cooldown that just hits for some damage. That's all it does. Essentially, this is something that you're going to be using in between your other abilities. It is filler. That is what it's for. Your artifact trait or ability is a 1.25 second. Okay, sorry. 1.25 minute cooldown that hurls a flaming keg and it deals some fire damage, and all nearby enemies, their next attack misses. This is meant to be some sort of defensive, but my issue with it is not everything can miss. If this will make a boss's super crazy smack, tank ability thing miss, hey, fantastic. That's kind of interesting. But if it can't make special abilities or specific spells or things like that miss, I honestly don't see the point of this talent or this artifact ability. It's kind of nice to be able to throw a flaming keg, but when you consider the fact that Dizzying Haze, one of the most iconic things about Brewmasters, their ability to throw kegs and kite things forever, that's just gone. And instead we get Exploding Keg. I would rather take my kiting tool back than this shit, if I'm perfectly honest. It doesn't feel good to have lost that and got Exploding Keg, which is very similar animation if you want to go ahead and look at it here. Boom, you're throwing a keg, it explodes for some fire damage. It kind of feels bad, especially when it's that slow. That's way, way early Dizzying Haze travel time. But potentially, if it makes any ability, any attack, any spell miss, it could be a decent little extra cooldown. I honestly don't see it being something that's super reliable, and it's probably just going to be like an AoE damage type thing. Just something used rotationally as it comes up. Then you have Breath of Fire. Historically, Breath of Fire has always been the joke of the Brewmaster. It's a super cool looking spell that you never used. Why? Because it was dog shit, and it took up 2 chi that you needed on your blackout kick. But now it's been changed. It no longer requires energy or chi. It's on a 15-second cooldown, and it's just AoE damage. If your target's affected by Keg Smash debuff, you will also burn them for some damage. The bad thing about this is that bosses cannot be affected by the Keg Smash debuff because the Keg Smash debuff is just a slow. So you lose out a bunch of the damage on bosses. Will they change that? I hope so, because it was a problem in Mists. They fixed it in WoD, but it might still be a problem in Legion because they kind of backtrack a lot in the stuff when they're making changes. I hope they fix that, or they remember to fix that. But it's nice to have Breath of Fire finally be used. It's a very cool animation. It's a very cool spell. It's nice to be able to finally use it and not feel bad. Fortifying Brew is still your major cooldown, and I might say your only baseline cooldown that you get. It turns your skin to stone for 15 seconds, increases your maximum and current health by 20%, increases the damage you delay with stagger by an additional 26%, and reduces all damage you take by 20%. This is your oh shit thing. You use this because you're trying to hunker down, you gotta be tanky, you gotta survive the thing. But the problem here is it's all you have. Iron Skin Brew is powerful enough that it could be considered a defensive cooldown. But the problem is it's also your active mitigation. It's something that you're sort of not expected to have all the time, but you're going to be using frequently. You don't have a big absorb shield. You don't have a take 20% less damage for whatever seconds. You don't have things that redirect damage or things that make you heal up for a specific amount of damage. I feel that Brewmasters are lacking at least one, maybe even 2 shorter forms of cooldowns. If you look at things like Prop Paladins, they literally have Shield of Righteous as a 40% damage reduction. Eye of Tyr has 20% damage reduction. Divine Protection, no, not Divine, Argent Defender has a 20% damage reduction. Guardian of Ancient Kings as like a 40 or 50% damage reduction. That's 4 cooldowns now. 4. They can talent their sprint to be 20% damage reduction, unless Paladins are getting hit for their entire health bar. That's 5 sources of damage reduction. Brewmasters have arguably 2. That's a problem, and it is a problem, because when you're tanking raids, you need to be able to line up your cooldowns with certain abilities, especially Mythic, which again, please, I want to stress this to everyone, guys. I'm not talking about questing. I'm not talking about heroic dungeons, although it does leads into that. I'm talking about Mythic raiding, heroic raiding, Mythic dungeons. Those things. For those things, it is important to have various tools. And with the tool set that Brewmasters have, I'm not convinced yet. Playstyle-wise, like actually playing it, it seems okay. You seem pretty good. You don't seem... even when you're on lower health, you're not like immediately in danger. And I'll explain a little more about that. But I do think it's important to note that you don't have as many ways to reduce damage as you used to in the past, and that can be an issue. Mythic Manor Oath, anyone? But anyways, that's Fortifying Brew, 5-minute cooldown. Crackling Jade Lightning is still just a nice little ranged attack that you can do to pool. Iron Skin Brew is your new active mitigation. It's probably the most important part of your entire kit. It has a 19.8 second, obviously reduced by haste, recharge rate, and your baseline you have 3 charges of Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew that are shared. What Iron Skin Brew does is it increases your stagger by 40% for 7.5 seconds. It gives you a massive amount of extra stagger. Now, when I first saw this, and many people when they first saw this, the idea was you keep this up as much as possible. The problem is, according to Celestalon, which is a very prolific, game developer who was posting on the alpha forums giving feedback, that is not their intention. It's not what they intend for you to be doing. You're not supposed to try to keep this up 100% of the time. You're supposed to use this when you're on lower levels of health. But I will explain that entire thing because honestly that's a section in and of itself. And it's not going to make sense until I explain all of the spells and talents and traits and all that kind of stuff. So I promise you we will get to that. This might be a little bit... I don't want these videos to be as long as they have been, but this might be a little bit longer because we have to go into the fact that unprecedented, they've given us the way you're meant to play. They never do this. Windwalker Monks had this notorious thing in Mists of Pandaria where they said, you guys aren't playing the spec right, there's a secret way to play it, and it makes, you do so much damage. That never got discovered, and they never explained that. But Celestalon came out and said, this is what we're intending, and it should work out like this. And what does it? I don't know. I'll go ahead and explain the rest of this. Detox still exists, removes poison and disease. Keg Smash is still your most important rotational button. 40 energy, haste reducing cooldown, 25-yard range, which is actually kind of nice because it's pretty decently big range. You smash a keg of brew on the target, dealing a shit ton of damage to all enemies within 8 yards. You slow them down, and it reduces the remaining cooldown on Iron Skin and Purifying Brew charges by 4 seconds. Keg Smash used to be the most important ability because it was giving you 2 chi, it was doing a shit ton of damage, it was very, very important. It's doubly important because it's reducing the cooldown on your charges, which you live and die by, according to the way they've set this up. Keep this shit on cooldown. Effuse. Small, cheap, shitty heal. I don't know why, but some hybrids have really good healing spells, and other hybrids have why does this exist healing spells. This is one of those why does this even exist healing spells. Sure, it's nice to have a castable heal, but does it actually heal much? No, it doesn't. It really doesn't. I wish they would make that old baseline. Let hybrids, if they have a healing spell, let them heal. Let them heal for something. Paralysis. You're still going to incapacitate a target for a minute. You could do it on 1. It's 15-second cooldown. You still have some nice form of CC, which is always good as a tank, especially in challenge mode dungeons. Now, Expel Harm is back because originally it wasn't in the Legion Alpha, but it's come back and it's changed a bit. It's going to cost you 15 energy, but it's also going to draw in the positive chi of all healing spheres within 30 yards. Healing sphere, blah, blah, blah. I'm sorry I cannot speak. Healing spheres still exists in the Legion. They spawn around you, and you can pick them up by walking over them, or you can use Expel Harm to drag them all into you. Now, they're going to heal you for all the healing spheres, but it's also going to damage the nearest enemy for 1% of the amount that has been healed. So it's still retaining a little bit of that DPS-y element of it, but it's not really a spell you're going to use to DPS. It's your heal. It's how you're going to drag in a bunch of spheres when you need those spheres now and you can't be walking around to get them. I'm going to try to talk slower so I don't say things that sound like nonsense. It's always a good thing. Provoke is still your taunt, 8-second cooldown, and you can still make them run super quickly at you, which is always nice. Purifying Brew is the other side of your active mitigation. It's going to clear 50% of the damage that you are staggering. I don't like this because I'm used to stagger being cleared entirely by one Purifying Brew. And now the fact that it's being shared on charges with Iron Skin Brew, which, yes, you're not supposed to have up all the time, but is going to probably end up being up most of the time anyways. I don't like the fact that you can only clear 50% of whatever you're staggering. It devalues, it makes it so that, at least before, you really wouldn't stagger unless you were in yellow going into red. Like if there was a decent chunky amount of stagger, then you'd purify. Now it's going to be even more important that that be really high, because if not, if you're just staggering half of your stagger bar, which is this right here, which corresponds to your health, If this is full, that means that within 10 seconds you're going to take your entire health bar and damage from stagger. I mean, if it's not halfway, let's say it's only like 25% of the way, you'll be reducing it that much. If it's halfway, you'll be reducing it that much. And if it's over here, you'll probably reduce it to like down here. I use that instead of math because I'm shit at math. The point is, it's making you so you have to. It almost feels bad to use Purifying Brew. I don't know how else to explain it other than I don't like that it's 50%. I wish it would go back to the way it was before. Maybe tuning-wise it's needed to be there so the monks aren't overpowered. But again, I already don't see them as an overpowered class because, quite frankly, they're missing important, key, stable tools that I look for in tanks, especially when you're talking about going into mythics under-geared. I don't like the change to Purifying Brew. I think it needs to be reverted to just clearing all of your stagger. Or give it its own separate cooldown with not mixing in the charges with Iron Skin. Transcendence, Transfer, and Transcended still exists. 10-second cooldown on placing a spirit, 25-second cooldown on swapping with the spirit. Still fantastic. Trains, come on, can anyone say Thogard? Let's have another fight like that and make monks shine. Resuscitate is not a combat res, it's just a res, which is fantastic. Zen Med still exists, but it will only reduce all damage you take by 60%, not 90%. And moving or being hit by melee attack will still cancel it. So they nerfed this. There's a lot of cheesing and amazing things you could do with Zen Med, and that's been brought down a peg, a significant peg, 30% peg. Roll still exists, 2 charges, you just roll forward, iconic of the monk. Zen Pilgrimage still exists, Spearhand Strike still exists, it's your interrupt, 15-second cooldown. Celestial Fortune is a new passive that you have as a monk. You have an equal chance to your critical strike chance to duplicate all healing that you receive. What does that mean? If a priest lays a miracle down on you and it would heal you for 50% of your health, it's going to heal you for like 100% of your health. It basically makes it so as you stack crit, your healing and healer's healing is going to randomly just do a shit ton more. It's going to double. So, interesting. It's very interesting. Could be potentially, if it's not scaled right, like it's either going to be so weak that you don't worry about it, or so strong that it's fucking ridiculous. Who knows? Tiger Palm. Tiger Palm replaces Jab, and is no longer a free spammable ability. What it does is 25 energy, it just does some damage, but the important part is it reduces the remaining cooldown on Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew by 1 second. So what this means is, it's your filler. You use this in between keg smashes and blackout kicks, or blackout strikes. You use it just to not cap on energy and help your brew charges get recharged. So Gift of the Ox. When you take damage, you have a chance to summon a healing sphere visible only to you. When you move through the healing sphere, you get healed for an amount, and the lower your current health, the greater your chance to summon a healing sphere. How do I feel about this? The amount that each healing sphere heals you for, I believe, from what I've been playing, what I've heard, it's much more than healing spheres individually heal you for in WoD now. You will never, as far as I'm aware, unless crit just gets ridiculous or something, and even then, it's not even based on crit anymore. Something that's iconic to Brewmasters is having just the ground littered with these healing spheres. Just these little orbs that you always have as a backup that you can run over when you've taken a massive hit. And it's nice when you're playing a Brewmaster just to see your little spheres, so you know that you're never, if you're in a bad situation, you're dropping health, you see them, you run into a pool of them, you'll be healed up, it's fantastic. That is not going to happen anymore. Because at this point, as I've been playing and doing dungeons and soloing, the amount of healing spheres that actually spawn is kind of abysmal. They are very, very, they don't spawn as much as you would think that they would. And, I mean, it will scale with your health being lower. You'll get more of them. And it just feels weird. It does. There's a talent that sort of fixes it, if my understanding of it is correct. But it's not necessarily going to be as often as you do now. And apparently, according to Blizzard, this is another part of your resources or another thing that you're managing. And I'll get to how that works in just a bit. Your mastery is Elusive Brawler. This has changed from Warlords. Each time you're hit by a melee attack, you gain a stacking 14% increased dodge chance until your next successful dodge, and increases your attack power by 14%. Basically, every once in a while you're going to dodge. Every once in a while you have a guaranteed dodge, and it just means that you're never, you probably won't take like 3 or 4 hits in a row that is without a dodge in between. So every once in a while you just dodge. That's all it means. I don't like RNG, but if there was going to be a dodge tank or a tank that used dodge in some significant manner, it would have to be a Brewmaster, I suppose. It doesn't make me happy about it, personally speaking. I don't think it's reliable, and I think unreliable things are shit. Um, but I get why it exists, and you do end up dodging a lot because of just the way that it stacks. And then Stagger is still a passive. You shrug off attacks dealing 35% of physical damage instead of taking it over 10 seconds, and affects magical attacks at half effectiveness. Anything that isn't a direct physical attack, this includes like bleeds and other things, is going to be half of your Stagger passive is going to be staggered. So you're just able to baseline stagger things, which is nice because there was a talent in Warlords that let you stagger magic damage at half, but then they nerfed stagger to the ground and it made it kind of pointless. You never use it anyways. So, honestly, baseline, it doesn't feel too good to play this. What I ended up doing when I was first trying this out was running around and, okay, so I have these abilities, right? I'm going to do Iron Skin Brew, Keg Smash, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire, Iron Skin Brew's running out, Iron Skin Brew, Keg Smash, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Tiger Palm. Let's throw in this kick because why not? Iron Skin Brew, Blackout Strike, Keg Smash, Tiger Palm, Breath of Fire, Iron Skin, Tiger Palm, Kick Smash, Blackout, Tiger Palm. Just kind of waiting, Blackout Strike. That's what I ended up doing. That's how I ended up playing. And if you noticed, at no point does a Healing Sphere spawn. Why? Because it's very much dependent on taking damage. So unless you're taking damage, you have a very low chance of spawning these Healing Spheres. And I thought that the intention was that you were going to keep up your Iron Skin as much as humanly possible. No. That's not the intended purpose. Okay, so what is the intended purpose? Celestalon came out, made a giant blue post a little while back, explaining how they envision Brewmasters working. So essentially, the TLDR version of this is when you're at full or near health, so when you're like at 100 to 80%-ish health, you save your brew charges. Don't use Iron Skin Brew. Because as you're taking damage, you'll be spawning some Gift of the Ox healing orbs, and you won't have to worry about being bursted down because you're always staggering. If you're damaged in the area of around 40 to 80%, you're in the perfect spot. You're taking enough damage to proc your healing orbs every once in a while still being in a safe health zone. I would argue 40% is way too fucking low. That's insanity. You want to be probably 50% to 60% health is your sweet spot, quotation marks. But that's basically where you're taking some damage, you're building up a stagger, you're making some orbs here and there. You're able to use an Iron Skin Brew if you want to, but it's not as important, and you should purify if you go over 50% stagger. Don't pick up healing orbs. You should try to save them for when you drop down low. So then he goes on to say that when you're dangerously damaged, between 30 to 50%, don't panic. Use Iron Skin, start grabbing some healing spheres, let your healing spheres pool around you, use a few of them, and purify when you're over 50 to 60%. If you're at 30% health, I don't care what Blizzard says, how raid encounters are going to work. I don't give a shit if they say that you're not going to be bursted down in 2 hits. I don't care, because what's the reality? The reality is you will get bursted in 1 or 2 hits. That is always what ends up happening. Don't sit at 30% health, guys. Please, for the love of God. Like, I shouldn't have to tell you this. I would say the sweet spot should be 80 to 60%. And then the point where you need to start really worrying is at 50% to 40%. In my head, I don't know if maybe this isn't correct, but if you're at 30% health and you have nothing to use, you're probably just going to die. And in fact, they then go on to say that if you're lower than 30% health, that's when you use Fortifying Brew. You need to keep up healing spheres. They should be spawning like crazy. That's what they said. I don't find that to be reality. You should never use your Fortifying Brew reactively. It is a proactive cooldown because you're going to reduce damage before you get hit, not get hit low, and then try to reduce slow amounts of damage that are cutting you slowly down. It's not the way you want to play it. But essentially what they said that they discovered is that as they were doing their tests, they essentially realized that a Brewmaster can stay in a damaged state. When he drops low, he's proccing so many healing spheres that he can then use to heal himself back up. And he needs to make sure that he isn't using Iron Skin Brew at high health, because it's going to reduce the chance that your healing spheres will spawn so that when you need them, you can't use them. My only issue with all of this is, first of all, outside factors are going to determine that. If you're in a magical fight, you can't be, yeah, you have higher stagger with Iron Skin Brew, but it's half of as effective. So no, you can't be at 30% health. That's ridiculous. My issue with that is that the reality is you can keep Iron Skin Brew up almost all the time. You really can, even with this cooldown recharge rate. Like, you, for the most part, unless you're like spamming Purify, which for reasons I've already explained, 50% of your damage, you don't need to spam Purify. It's probably not going to be as effective. You will never purify everything. You have to remember that. You can never purify all of your staggering damage. That is gone forever. Because if you're at, let's say, 100% stagger and you purify to 50, and then you purify again, now you're at 25. You see that? You will never clear your stagger bar with Purify ever again. That's a problem, in my opinion. It makes Purifying Brew almost like, why the fuck would I use this? I'll use this when I'm in like the danger zone, the 80% stagger zone. Otherwise, healers can handle it. You'll have like 5 hots on you anyways. Don't worry about it, and you're going to want to spawn healing spheres. It's important to know. It is. Even if you take a giant burst of damage, maybe then you use one Purifying Brew just to kind of clear that out. But since you'll never get all of it, it really does devalue its usefulness. So that's the way they said that they think you should play. But the reality is, unless you're getting hit down decently low, which I was trying to kill myself at points just to see how many healing spheres would spawn. Unless you're pretty damn low, you're not spawning them. Especially if you don't take one of the talents we're going to go ahead and go over. And you can keep Iron Skin Brew up almost all the time, which kind of begs the question, why don't you? It just keeps you more tanky. And mind you, when I was doing my dungeon run and I had it up almost all the time and I was doing everything else as I should, I did feel decently tanky. I did. Even dropping down low, when I did drop low, even when using this rotationally almost always on me, and I had like 1 or 2 healing spheres, those shits heal for a shit ton. They really, really do. So I don't know exactly how it's going to end up being, but I would hazard a guess you're just going to use Iron Skin almost on cooldown just to make sure it's up on you all the time, or at least the most important parts. In my opinion, I'm just saying. I'm not a Blizzard employee. Maybe I'm talking out of my ass. It just feels like their vision is another one of those things where how they saying it should work doesn't translate exactly into a real world playing the game scenario. But anyways, enough about that. I went ahead and explained that. That was my little thing for that. And now we can move on to the rest of this. So, the first tier of talents, you have Chi Burst, which works as it does now, Chi Wave, which works as it does now, and Eye of the Tiger. Eye of the Tiger is Tiger Palm applies Eye of the Tiger. It deals some instant nature damage to the enemy and heals you for a certain amount over 8 seconds. Overall, I found myself using Eye of the Tiger just because I wanted a little bit of extra damage and just healing myself. I thought it made a little more sense than maybe just carrying around Chi Wave or Chi Burst. This is obviously AoE or multi-targets. This is probably going to be for... I mean, this probably does more healing and damage. Maybe not healing to you, but overall healing to your raid and your group. Chi Wave will be better. Eye of the Tiger is probably just a solo thing, to be honest. Chi Wave is going to be more advantageous because it's an active versus a passive, which active should be more powerful. But it doesn't really seem like it matters, besides making sure that you take Chi Burst for AoE. I will note, I felt like I was getting energy really quickly all the time when I was playing this. It is not a situation where you can energy starve yourself if you play poorly, but if not, you're almost like racing to make sure you don't cap your energy, which is a really weird sensation to feel, especially on a character that does not have super high amounts of gear, and more specifically on a Brewmaster that has never been energy capping like crazy. The next tier is Chi Torpedo, which does not do damage anymore. It just rolls you forward more and gives you a move speed buff after 10 seconds, which is fantastic. It's Like it's momentum and roll and chi torpedo combined. Celerity, which still gives you another charge and reduces the cooldown by 5. Now that this doesn't do healing and damage, not having a combo celerity doesn't sting as much. And then there's Tiger's Lust, which is my personal preference. 30-second cooldown, 70% move speed, and you can use it on other people. I just love Tiger's Lust, personally speaking. But I like that you can use it on other people, or you can augment your roll by letting you roll more often or roll for further distances. So I like this move. I've always liked this movement tier for Brewmasters. Then you have Light Brewing. Reduces the cooldown of Iron Skin Brew and Purifying Brew by 3 seconds and increases their maximum number of charges by 1. My only issue with this is I already can almost maintain Iron Skin Brew up all the time. And that's keeping one Purifying Brew charge in the back to eventually purify some of the damage. While I think this will help people that maybe spam it a little more often, or maybe if you're doing some content that's just ripping your face apart and you need to purify it constantly, I don't think light brewing is going to scale very well throughout the course of the expansion, and I don't think it's going to be taken as often. And Black Ox Brew, it's a 1-minute cooldown that instantly refills your energy and your brew charges. But the problem with this is I already feel like my energy is constantly recharging. So at its base, you're going to be wasting some of the ability of this Black Ox Brew because you don't need the energy. You'll be half energy. You'll be at 25% 25% energy. It's a little bit of a waste. And honestly, again, very much like light brewing, I don't need 3 charges of my brew immediately. It's not something that is really all that necessary. Excuse me, I was coughing a little bit there. But anyways, the Black Ox Brew, it's not. I find that is less useful than light brewing, and light brewing already is a little bit diminished. I don't see most people ever taking Black Ox Brew. There's no point. Gift of the Mist though is the interesting one. It has a Gift of the Ox has an up to 100% increased chance to trigger based on your missing health. My understanding of this, even though it's worded a little weirded, is that basically every time you take up to 100% of your health, so obviously not that you die, but like let's say as I'm doing the encounter, I take up to 2,217k worth of damage, I will have a guaranteed 1 orb spawn. More likely you'll have more, but you'll at least have 1 once you've taken enough damage to equal your health bar. That's my understanding of that. Now, when I did not have this talent selected, Gift of the Ox Orbs felt like a scarcity. I almost never had them spawn. It didn't feel good. It kind of sucked. I clicked this, and all of a sudden I started seeing them pop up all the time. Whether that means they're bugged as it is, or it's abysmal to get them to spawn normally, I don't know. But even if it is, this is the only way to make Gift of the Ox Orbs feel reliable and usable. The other 2 choices on this tier are kind of shit. Let's be honest, they're kind of shit. So I see most people choosing Gift of the Mist, maybe choosing light brewing when they want to have an easier time using their brew charges. But Gift of the Mist I just see as being the go-to for the most part. The next tier is interesting because it gives you the choice of Ring of Peace, which is a 45-second cooldown, and it's going to knock people out of the Ring of Peace when they use a harmful spell ability. While tanking, probably not going to be used as much. And then you have two talents that will be used, depending on the situation. So your Ox statue, which has been the staple of the Brewmaster since the inception, is a talent now. It's a 10-second cooldown talent that's going to summon a Black Ox statue that basically gets threat on everything around it. Very similar to how it works right now in Warlords of Draenor. Black Ox, Dave is his name. If you're a Brewmaster, you call your Black Ox statue Dave. Dave is fantastic. Dave is life. Dave has always been the best. It sucks that you have to choose a talent to choose him. But he is strong enough and good enough that he should be considered a talent choice. That's how fantastic of a spell he is. And then you have to choose between him or Leg Sweep, which does what it does now. It's an AoE stun for 5 seconds. Essentially, it's going to come down to during the fight, do you need to pick up adds reliably, or do you need to stun things reliably? And it's going to depend on that, what you choose there. They're all good choices. It's not, like a... It's all decent choices there. It's a decent talent here besides Ring of Peace, but that might be more for PvP and maybe even challenge modes, casting it on a bunch of casters and then knocking them out just to interrupt. So it does have its uses as well. Then you have the 75 tier that has changed significantly. Although the concept of each talent has not changed, their effectiveness has. So Healing Elixir is a 30-second recharge. It has 2 charges, and when you use it, you heal for 15% of your maximum health. If you drop below 35% health, instantly it will be used if a charge is available. So they changed this because you're not drinking. Only brewmasters really drink brews and teas and all that kind of stuff that they used to have. Like, I don't even think Windwalkers have Tiger Eye Brew as brews that they're using anymore. I think it's just a DPS cooldown now. But what this basically does is you have on demand 2 charges of 15% of your max health, which is good. It's fantastic. The thing about Healing Elixirs versus the other two has always been, if you're not taking a big magical hit or just big hits in general, you take this just to heal yourself every once in a while, which, again, is pretty good as a monk, especially because you only have the healing orbs as a quotation marks reliable heal. So it's important to go ahead and have another thing. The problem here is I think that they're using this tier as that extra small cooldown. And the reality of it is you can have cooldowns that you talent into in your talent tier, but you need another one baseline. Brewmasters need another short cooldown baseline because they nerf these. Diffuse Magic is a 2-minute cooldown. It's going to reduce magic damage by 60%, not 90%, 60% of the damage for 6 seconds and redirect things if possible. And Dampen Harm is only going to reduce the damage of the next 3 attacks that damage you for 15% or more of your maximum health by 30%. It's not 50% anymore. These two have been significantly nerfed. In the world of less powerful tank cooldowns, yes, I can see why they're going to go ahead and reduce them a little bit. But in that same world where you only have one real big cooldown, it's kind of a pain in the butt to have that happen. For everyday normal stuff, you're going to want to go again and take Healing Elixirs, but for very specific mechanics and things of that nature, you're going to want to take Diffuse Magic or Dampen Harm. Excuse me, just one more, I'm going to cough. Sorry about that. I'm feeling a little bit under the weather. Don't mean to do that. But beyond that, like I was saying, between those three, it's going to depend on the situation. I just want Brewmasters to have another ability that's short term, that's just baseline that they can use. Finally, you have the 90 tier, which gives you a couple of interesting different things. At level 90, you have Rushing Jade Wind. You no longer have Spinning Crane Kick. So this is your only just general AoE around you talent. And it does as it does now. It doesn't cost you anything. It's just going to do AoE damage. Like that. It's nice to have it. It's definitely nice that you can talent into something like that. And it doesn't cost you energy anymore. It feels good to use it. Even on single target, if I'm being completely honest. Now, you also have access to Invoke Niuzao, the Black Ox. This replaces Zuen. What this does is it summons Niuzao, which is just like Zuen, just going to do damage and taunt. I have a problem with the talent, though. When we were summoning Zuen, he was a white tiger, which we were claiming and we were asking for the Black Ox for forever. But now that he's here, I think it's time to really reevaluate what Zuen as a talent choice was. He did a decent amount of damage. He did some cleave damage. I don't think Niuzao even does cleave damage because he doesn't have the Tiger Lightning going for him. But what is the point of him exactly? Zuen never did incredible amounts of damage. He could do some, but he wasn't like breaking the charts or anything. He's no Breath of Sindragosa. And all Niuzao does is taunt some stuff sometimes if you choose it to taunt. So what is the purpose exactly? Is it cool? Yes. But does it give you a damage reduction buff? Do you share health with Niuzao? Does he give you an extra ability to maybe rally your friendly allies and give them a health boost? Like what does he do besides existing and auto-attacking? I think they need to revise this. They need to give it another little hook, a little a little buff of something, a little boost. Let it do something. Let it do damage reduction. Let it be an actual cooldown. Like you bust out Neo Zao, oh shit, now you're splitting the damage you take with your Neo Zao effigy, and when he dies is when you lose the damage reduction because you're not sharing it anymore. Or Neo Zao is active, all your friendly allies are, it's like a weaker version of Rallying Cry. They have 10% increased health and take 10% less damage. Something like that. That would be cool. As it stands, I honestly would rather pick Rushing Jade Wind because it gives you something else to press that is actually worth it on single target. It's kind of weird. It is. Then you have Special Delivery, which does a shit ton of damage, but is so RNG that it feels bad. So whenever you drink one of your brews, you have a 30% chance to toss a keg into the air. It lands, does a shit ton of damage. It's like an extra keg smash, essentially, like a half damage keg smash. Single target not moving as much, I see this being the primary choice. And AoE, of course, Rushing Jade will probably always reign supreme. Which, again, leaves you in the situation where, what's the point of Neo Zao? Why not make this a actual tank cooldown? So that then you have this choice in this tier of, do I want the damage reduction, or do I want this chance every couple of seconds to basically throw my fist into someone's face and do stupid damage to them, or have a constant pulsing AoE damage. Let this tier be a choice between having extra damage or being more tanky. Because as it stands, we don't really have to make that choice anywhere else. Brewmasters sadly don't have that choice, that option to do more damage, but do more damage and maybe take a little bit of a hit to the survivability. That shit doesn't exist. The next tier has you Elusive Dance. This is your level 100 tier, mind you, which is going to suck with how disappointing all these choices are. But Elusive Dance Purifying Brew also grants up to 15% dodge for 6 seconds based on level of stagger damage purified. So you can't just use Purifying Brew and have 15% dodge. No, it's based on the amount of damage that you purify. I mean, dodge is already not the most reliable, best thing in the world. And on top of that, as I said, Purifying Brew doesn't even feel really worth using. So I don't really see much of a point in Elusive Dance. Maybe when you're actually tanking bosses and raid bosses that will do a significant amount of damage and you will want to purify, maybe then it'll be mapped out to be worth it. But until then, I see this as kind of a lackluster talent. It's nice, but it's not level 100 nice worthy. It's not level 100 talent tier worthy. It's just not. Fortified Mind. Keg Smash and Tiger Palm also reduce the cooldown of Fortifying Brew. This is just going to depend on whether you can get an extra use of Fortifying Brew throughout the fight. If you can, nice. If you can't, pointless. Just pointless. And then you have High Tolerance, which just increases your stagger by 5%. Baseline. This is a fine talent just because of the fact that it just makes you more tanky in the sense that it's reducing and delaying more damage, which is always nice. And I feel that can be an acceptable level 100 talent. If the other talent was, I don't know, Chi Explosion, why can't this be High Tolerance and this be Chi Explosion? Chi Explosion, you consume a charge of your brew. Or you could do Brew Explosion. You throw a brew at the enemy target, and it does, damage and something else and some other bullshit, and it's a trade-off between damage and being more tanky because you're already sitting at 3 charges and you don't really need as many, and then it would have synergy with Light Brewing because then you'd have an extra charge of throw a bottle at your face brew. Like, I don't know. I'm vastly disappointed in this last talent tier here. I feel that the level 30 tier is more exciting than the level 100 tier. I feel the level 90 tier is better than level 100 tier. I don't like this tier at all. I would probably just most of the time take High Tolerance when you're tanking. This, if you can math it out to make it worth it, so that you have more Fortifying Brews throughout the fight. And Elusive Dance, if for whatever reason at some point you need 15% dodge. Overall, highly disappointed in this talent tier. It's just the truth of the matter. With all that being said, we have to take a look at the artifact traits because, trust me, your class is being balanced by all your artifact traits. And we're going to go and take a look at that. So we have Exploding Keg. We already talked about that. You then have Full Keg, increases the damage of Keg Smash, making it more important. Increases the healing done by healing spheres of the Gift of the Ox. They already heal you for a shit ton. This just makes them even more important. Gift of the Ox summons an additional healing sphere when your health drops below 35% health. Very good, very necessary. It will help with those clutch, expel harm, heals. Face Palm. Tiger Palm has a 45% chance to reduce the remaining cooldown of your brews by 1 additional second, which is fantastic because you are using your Tiger Palm constantly, especially since it doesn't cost that much energy and you actually have a decent amount of energy regen. Um, the power within Fu Yan seeps into your very being, increasing your hardness in battle, increasing your total health by a portion. The position here, along with this gold trait, kind of makes me wonder if that's actually still a talent or not. But we'll pretend that it is. But basically, increases your health by a certain amount. Then you have Breath of Fire increases the damage of Breath of Fire, increases the duration of Iron Skin Brew, which again is going to make it easy to maintain. Increases your maximum health by 15%, which makes me think this will be removed because it's right there. Increases the critical strike chance of Blackout Strike, just does damage. Activating Blackout Strike reduces the damage you take by 15% from the next auto attack that strikes you, which is again going to emphasize that Blackout Kick, you use it off cooldown. If Craig Smash isn't on cooldown, you're not going to cap chi, Blackout Kick, because it's just giving you some passive damage reduction. Activating Fort Brew, Purifying Brew, or Iron Skin Brew increases your movement speed by 6% for 15 seconds, stacking up to 5 times, which is kind of nice because you're going to be using brews constantly. You'll have a nice, decent amount of movement speed. Will you need it? Probably not. You have Roll, you have Tiger's Lust, you have other things, but it's just nice. Each time Gift of the Ox generates a healing sphere, it has a 30% chance to instead generate a greater healing sphere that heals for twice as much. So you have a chance to generate another one, or you will generate another one when you're under 35%, and that other one could be Super Sphere. So already you can see there's a lot that ties into those spheres. Those spheres are your other resource. Keep that in mind. You don't want to waste them. They are your oh shit, heal me back up, Scotty. That's what it is. Then you have Smashed. Increases the range of Kick Smash by 10 yards. I can Kick Smash from here. That's a little ridiculous. Let's just be fair. That's a little ridiculous. Staggering around. Fortifying Brew increases the damage you delay with Stagger by an additional 6%, which is just making your very powerful cooldown more powerful. But it also makes it so that without that cooldown, you are significantly weaker. Because it doesn't increase your baseline Stagger, it just makes your Fort Brew that much better, which makes you that much worse when you don't have it up. That's just how it goes. Now your gold traits are Dragonfire Brew. Breath of Fire surrounds you with the flame, burning nearby energies for a certain amount and reducing all damage you take by 8%. So what does this mean? It means you're going to want to, if it actually procs, let's check. We're just going to melee attack this. Basically what this means is, again, just like Blackout Kick, you're going to want to keep this up because it's passive damage reduction that is not a lot, but it's nice to have. Let's see. There we go. Reducing damage dealt to you by 8%. So this, along with the Blackout Kick damage reduction, you're starting to see now that there's a little bit of passive stuff going on just because you do probably need that extra damage reduction. And it's nice to have, but it's also emphasizing you're using Blackout Kick and Breath of Fire basically on cooldown. Then you have Brew Stash. Activating Purifying Brew or Iron Skin Brew grants you 15% dodge for about 3 seconds. So that combined with the other talent just gives you dodge for purifying, or in this case Iron Skinning, which again is nice, but it's not. I would rather have the 8% on Breath of Fire instead of a 15% chance to dodge. That's just mathematically, this is more reliable, although this can give you some nice results. And then Fortification. Fortifying Brew grants you 25% dodge. Again, I don't like dodge. I've said it so many times at this point. If there is a class that's going to dodge, though, it would make sense for it to be Brewmasters. I just hope that with all these little chances to dodge and your mastery chance to dodge, I just hope it actually feels like you can not. It's never going to be reliable because that can't exist with RNG. But I just hope that it works out to help continue to smooth out your damage intake along with Stagger, which would make sense. So as you can see, they have a lot of things just working together for a very basic interaction and mechanic of use your Iron Skin Brew to increase your Stagger, purify when it's dangerously high, keep Blackout Strike and Breath of Fire on cooldown for damage reduction, Keg Smash on cooldown, more important than anything else because you want your cooldowns of your brews to be reduced, and Tiger Palm not to fill energy and to also help reduce the cooldown of your brews. It basically works out to be a pretty simple thing of just, like I did earlier, Iron Skin, Keg Smash, Tiger Palm, Blackout Kick, Breath of Fire, Chi Wave, Tiger Palm, use your Brew, Blackout Strike, Keg Smash, Tiger Palm, and Brew, Blackout Strike, Keg Smash, there you go, Tiger Palm, Blackout Strike, Breath of Fire, Brew, blah. Now, does this mean that you will need to play the way Celestion was mentioning, where you just let your health drop low and you don't use your Iron Skin Brew as often? Maybe. I mean, as you see there, Breath of Fire and Blackout Strike do give you some damage reduction. Now, I don't think you're ever going to want to just sit on 3 charges of your brew, because that has never in the history of World of Warcraft made any sense. You don't want to sit on charges and not have them recharging, because that doesn't make sense. You're just wasting potential right by doing that. So it's definitely a very interesting. It's different than what it used to be. Whether that different is good or bad, I'm not entirely sure. I'm really not. It's going to depend on the tuning. It's going to depend on how hard you get hit. It's going to depend on the fights. But I distinctly feel a lack of control over a lot of the things. A lot of it's been taken away from you. You cannot activate your dodge brew when you want to with elusive brew whenever you want to. You cannot just absorb a bunch of damage. You have to manage your stagger. You have to make sure you're managing your healing orbs. And will they be as reliable and stable as they've been the entire time since they were introduced to the game? I don't know. It's still to be told. As far as me liking it versus the other one, I don't. I like the version of it now because I like having the guard for the big hits. I like having my crazy damage reduction for all kinds of stuff. I like, Zen Med cheesing stuff. I like diffuse magic cheesing stuff. But I have to admit that that could be a problem. When a brewmaster has an answer to every single solution and can cheese things no one else can, that is a problem. I have to be able to admit that that is a problem. I have to be able to admit that that needs to be changed. And is it bad? I don't think so. I really don't. I think that they even sort of play okay. It doesn't feel as good to play as maybe like the prop paladin with the seraphim and everything else. They don't have the DPS choices that a prop paladin does or a vengeance demon hunter does. They don't have the excessive amounts of disgusting cooldowns and damage reduction a bear does or a DK does. But I definitely see, whereas those other tanks have the talent into or make decisions like that, baseline brewmasters have those choices already built in. You are worrying about your brew charges, you are worrying about your gift of the ox, and you are trying your best not to panic when you get hit down low, because you have things built in to keep you safe when you're lower, keep you stable enough that you can heal up. Whether that works in practice, because theory is one thing, practice is another. Whether that actually works in a raid, I won't be able to tell you until I'm testing it in raids when the game launches. But is it possibly okay? Yeah, possibly. As far as your tanking tools, your teleport will always be very useful, but honestly, you're coming out of this less than you had before. You can no longer kite things for days with your Dizzying Haze. You can no longer cheese as much as you could with Diffuse Magic and Zen Med. Your cooldowns here have become weaker. At least you have the constant AoE that you can with Rushing Jade Wind, but Niu Zhao is virtually a useless ability. Your level 100 tier is entirely useless. Thank God Keg Smash has a god range, because otherwise, see how far I can use this from, right here. Otherwise, you'd have no way to pull from range like you used to with Chi Explosion. I think that overall Brewmasters have lost more than they've gained, but in this world of making tanks weaker, whether they will be the lowest on the totem pole, whether they will not have a place on the totem pole at all, I think they'll be okay. I can tell you they're better than Prot Warriors playing-wise, and I can see how they make more sense than Prot Warriors. But whether they're going to be the choice of Mythic Tank or anything, it's really going to depend. It honestly is. I cannot tell you for certain what the future is going to be like or what anything's going to happen until we're in it together. There is no offense-defense balancing or choices here. I already explained it. There's really that doesn't really exist for them, which is sad. But I've already kind of showed you their abilities, how they work. Nothing too new or flashy. They've already had all their flashy abilities. I can show you the throwing keg again. Just explodes. Has a stupidly long travel time. But I'm hoping that they'll be okay, but I'm not sure. I'm really not. There are things that I wish they had that make me, as a person thinking, going into mythic raids, mythic dungeons, you're not going to have all the gear that you have now. You're not going to be geared up for a while. You're going to have to kill bosses without having that certain gear for a while, because you need to gear up the DPS first, and then your tanks and things like that. They're missing key things that I think are important to have in those situations, and I do not see them having an answer for every single situation. Will they be fine? Probably. Will they be the best? I don't think so. Not as it stands now, but tuning is still going on here in the Legion Alpha. Ultimately, guys, those are my opinions on the Brewmaster Monk. Less than they were in WoD, but to be fair, they were fucking amazing in WoD. And you have to be able to admit that maybe a lot of the things needed to be scaled back because they were too much. They really were just too much. They had too much available to them. But anyways, guys, that has been my updated impressions here on the Legion Alpha for the Brewmaster Monk. If you like this, please go ahead and drop it a like. More importantly, if you love this stuff, go ahead and subscribe to the channel. I will be now moving on from my updated impressions to doing dungeon runs, as well as more before that, a discussion on the legendary items for each tank spec, my thoughts on them, and how they might change your decisions and your playstyle from what we've just gone ahead and done with all of the tanks about my updated impressions, how I think they're meant to be played. But anyways, guys, I hope that you have a wonderful day, a wonderful night, a wonderful week, a wonderful month. I hope that you just have positivity in your life. And I hope that you look forward to what else I could bring to the table here in the next video that'll come out. Have a wonderful day.